Yes, hello again. This is now tarot lesson number 76, and I'm going to talk about numbers because people have asked. So, there are basically two systems of numerology. One is the so-called Pythagorean system, and the other one is Cheiro. But this is the Pythagorean system, so-called, where you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you put A, B, C, D, E, all the way through. When you get to 9 or I, you go back to 1 again, and so that J is 1, and K is 2, and L is 3, and so on. So, and then when you get to, can't read that, QR, when you get to R, then you go back to S again, and you get 1, okay? So this is how it works. And this is, a lot of people use this method. The thing about it is, I think you need to know what the numbers mean. And you need to look in a book, I think, and learn that 27 means this, or 15 or whatever it happens to be means this. And I never learned any of that. And I'll show you what I think is a better system. Because here's an example. If you take Adam and Eve, right? We know about Adam and Eve. We've all heard, I imagine, of Adam and Eve. Adam is A is 1, D is 4, A is 1, and M is 4, right? So Adam is 1 plus 4 plus 1 plus 4, and that's 10. And what does 10 mean? I don't know. Presumably it's a new beginning, because 1 plus nothing is 1 again. And 10 is a combination of 1 and 0, and it's like unity represented by the number 1, and 0, this unknown quantity. So maybe you could do something with 10 that way. But when we do Eve, there's E is 5, V is 6. No, sorry, V is 4, and E is 5. So it's 5 plus 4 plus 5 equals 14. Right, so Eve is 14. I don't know, what does 14 mean? I don't know. And you can look in a book and find out about 14. I know there's a 14th major trump, but we're not supposed to. We're going to see if we can do something with just the Pythagorean system on its own. Any other word that comes up and adds up to 14, then that word and Eve are interchangeable in some kind of a way. So this is what a lot of people use for numerology, and I don't know if they're happy with it. Good. I'm not. I don't use this because I prefer this other method, which I'll show you. And so it's Cheiro, Cheiro. There's a book called Cheiro's Book of Numbers, Cheiro. If you go onto Google, you'll get Kero. Seems to be a different spelling of the name, or a different variation. But here you'll find, I'll put in the link below in the description rather. I'll give you the values that go with the letters, and you can do this for yourself. But the reason I like Adam and Eve is because the system uses the numbers 1 through to 9, but there's a planet attached to each number, and the planet means you can tell a story. So Adam, the first man, right, is 1 plus 4 plus 1 plus 4 is 10. But 10 equals 1 for the sun. So Adam is the sun. Adam is the life force, the life-giving, creative force, energy that makes life possible. And it's also, Adam is the masculine, and the sun is the masculine force in the heavens. So there's a correlation, or there's a harmony between Adam using Cheiro and the planet that goes with it. Whereas Eve is 565, is 16, is 7, and 7 is the number of the full moon, and the moon is the feminine force. So Eve is this combination of the sun opposite the moon. That's the symbol for the opposition. The sun opposite the moon, and it's the full moon. So if you look at this up in the sky and you see the moon going through its phases, or her phases, at a certain point and for a moment, the moon is exactly opposite the sun, and the moon is reflecting as much of the sun as it can possibly do. And that's what Eve represents. But it's interesting that Adam is masculine and Eve is feminine, the moon. You don't get that I don't think you get that with this Pythagorean method where Adam is 10, okay, but Eve is 14. What's the significance of 14? You need to know. So, if we then look at people struggle with court cards. So King is 2, 1, 5, 3. 2 and 1 is 3, and 5 is 8, and 3 is 11. King is 11. So what we do is we take King is 11, and 11 is the basic idea, and we build this huge edifice on top of the number 11. 11 is an extra bit of information for you to think about when you're dealing with a king. It doesn't mean it's the most important or the only thing that's important. It's something that when you remember the idea of king and 11 going together, it'll give you maybe a different bit more information you can give to the questioner about the nature of the king of whatever the suit happens to be. Right? Do you know what I mean? I'm telling you this to give you more ideas or more information rather than to say this is everything and you've got to understand this and build on this. It's more casual than that and more spontaneous. So that king is 11. So I'm using the traditional correlation of 11 and the strength card, not the justice card, but that's a different conversation. So with a king, you're dealing with the strength card in some way. So does it mean that the king is at his best? Leo's the king, right? It's a lion, the king. So Leo, the king is at his best when he's got himself under control. And maybe that's the problem with a king reverse, that there's nobody to tell them stop, or there's nobody to tell them no, or people say stop and they don't listen. And so maybe with the king card or any king, you also have to develop the idea of strength. So what kind of strength is it? There's physical strength, there's moral strength, there's emotional strength, there's mental strength. And it can be that with each of the kings, then that idea of some kind of strength is going to be important. Or it may not be obvious, but it's important. And that's where you, the reader, can come up with a more sophisticated answer by in some way including or incorporating the idea of strength into what it means to be a king. Queen, Queen, is 16555 equals 1522. Okay, so Queen, when you use Cheiro's system, adds up to 22, which happens to be double the king, right? And 22 is a major trump, and it's the Fool card. So the Queen relates in some way to the Fool. The Queen has to be willing to take a risk or take a chance. Think of the difference between a man and a woman. Women give birth. They actually carry the child for multiple months, and you don't know if it's going to work, if you're going to produce a child, a saint or a sinner. It's risky business having a child. And so the Queen appreciates that, or is going to be forced to deal with the consequences, whereas the king isn't. The king's 11. the king gets this process going and then he's out of it. But it's the queen who actually does the work, because it's 22. And so then we've got the knight, Knight is 251354 2 7 8 11 16 20, right? So the knight relates to judgment. So knights are also about rebirth and renewal and making things better and responding to a higher call, or being motivated by uplifting urges rather than the knight reversed, who is more likely to take a shortcut or to not really care about the consequences of what they do. And they don't have much moral backbone, let's say, if you're the knight reversed. There's a danger that you are going to miss the chance to be renewed or to be reborn or to be revitalized if the knight is upside down, because the knight in some way relates to the judgment card. And the other thing that I thought was King, King. You may have noticed this already, but if you rearrange the letters of King and you put Knig and you put an H and a T at the end, you get a knight. So what's the difference between a king and a knight? The difference between a king and a knight is an H and a T. H is 5 and T is 4, is 9, and 9 is Mars, the planet of personal creative energy. So the difference between a knight and a king is knights are warriors, or knights have personal creative energy, whereas a king doesn't. And you think about kings and queens on a chessboard. The king can only move one square at a time, assuming it's unoccupied, or he can take, right? But the king can only move one square at a time, whereas the queen can go as far as she wants or as far as she can, horizontally, diagonally, left or right, doesn't matter. Because, I think I mentioned this before, ages ago, the queen, if the king is going to move, the king, he can't just jump in his car and drive away. He's got the courtiers, and he's got people and advisors and civil servants and followers on and staff. So for the king to move, it's a big you can't just suddenly up and leave. Whereas the queen, because the queen produces the children who keep the bloodline going, she has to be able to move quickly and immediately and a distance. So there's a difference between the queen and the king in that way, and between a knight who has personal creative energy and a king who doesn't. And last but not least, we have the page, because people always want to know, what do pages mean? PAGE is 8135. 8 and 1's 9 and 8's 17. The page relates to the star, which means pages are meant to make a name for themselves, or can ultimately make a name for themselves. And pages have got maybe an inspirational side to them that is maybe not obvious from the page itself, because we can tend to think of pages as representing young people. But maybe there's more to it than that. And so we've got the mature individual here in the star card. And maybe the page is meant to. I sometimes debate with people or argue with them about I say knights are messengers, and they bring change. And some people say pages are messengers. Maybe what they mean is the page is a message, or has a message of hope and inspiration. And so a page would be an inspiring individual, or somebody who points out the benefits of something, or who points out the good side. Whereas the page upside down, you ought to be focusing on what's good, but you're focusing on what's gone wrong. The star upside down. Okay, so this is I don't. This is not a speech I'm giving you. It's more, let's just do something and see where we go. So I've left out a lot. I may come back to it. If you've got comments, leave them, and I'll see if I can deal with them. But it's kind of, one step at a time, and we'll see where we end up. So that was lesson number 76. Thank you for watching. I'll be back. Again, the wall is still unsanded, and so I still have to be careful. Or not careful, but I have to make sure that I set things up so that the computer doesn't get full of drywall dust. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ideally in a few days, whenever that will be. So let me just put these cards away as I do, and then, as usual, a quick shuffle to mix everything ready for the next time. And that's it done, and then I covered it up and I put it all away. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you next time. Okay, bye-bye.